Hey, good Sunday morning, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful and blessed day out there. Got a big time update here for you on a couple of things, including what has really upticked in the tropics over the past, I would say, 12 to 24 hours. The National Hurricane Center now officially monitoring an area of interest, and overnight model runs, unfortunately, have gotten a bit more aggressive and taking a track that is a little more concerning in some of the ensembles. So we're going to take a look at that in today's video. I'll give you the latest. We're also going to discuss this big time pattern change on the way for much of the country going into the coming week. And it could really kind of put a bit of a damper on some of those Halloween plans. So definitely stay tuned for that as well as we get a little bit later on in the video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Hit that bell for the latest notifications. Like the video, comment, share with somebody that you think might find it useful, especially for some of the folks that might get impactful weather over the next week. Again, it's going to be a little bit of everything. I would say this is kind of prime fall-like weather with the tropics kind of being active and a good old-fashioned mid-latitude cyclone or two crossing the country this week. Again, it's really going to start to feel like fall, and it's going to get busy pretty quickly. And then that'll kind of lead us into winter season. Hopefully by the time we're done talking about all this tropical mess, we can start talking a little bit more on snowfall. But unfortunately, I can't rush time any more than any of you can. So we'll just have to wait until we get there. Alrighty, folks, let's go ahead and dive on into things and kind of start talking here because, again, a lot to discuss in this video. Might drag on a little bit longer than I want it to if I know myself well enough. All right, okay. Again, we'll get into it. So the Gulf of Mexico, Caribbean right now, things have picked up a little bit in current satellite imagery. You can kind of see that down here. We do have more of kind of this Central American gyre that is beginning to spin up some convection out here, specifically down towards Panama, Costa Rica on both the Atlantic and the Pacific side. But we're really going to be watching the Atlantic side starting right around Halloween and going through that first week of November. And I'll show you why here in just a second. Other than that, though, I mean, looking at the tropics, and you can even kind of see the eastern U.S. in this loop, things remain relatively quiet for most folks. Again, we'll take a look at kind of the surface map over the country in just a moment, but that's really all we're seeing currently on satellite outside of the western U.S., where another storm system is working on through. But we'll take a look with that on radar here once we get to that portion of the video. Now, something that is new here this Sunday is we officially have a lemon, as some folks like to call it here, into the Caribbean. And this is already at a 30% chance of development over the next 7 days from the National Hurricane Center. So again, this time yesterday we had nothing. They just issued this for the first time last night during their 8 p.m. advisory. And then this has been upped to a 30% chance since then. For, again, the potential of development within the next week. Again, though, nothing right now, and I think development, the earliest it'll happen is probably this coming Wednesday and Thursday. But really, any sort of impacts wouldn't be felt till probably 7 to 10 days from now. So still plenty of time to monitor it. But again, we've already been talking about it for a while. Officially now, the National Hurricane Center is also talking about it. So again, the forecast, unfortunately, looks to kind of be verifying in the direction that maybe you wouldn't want it to verify in down into the Caribbean. All right, so if you're a regular viewer, we're going to do things kind of backwards today. Normally, I start with the deterministic model runs, and then we look at the ensembles. I'm actually going to kind of flip it around. I think this might work a little bit better, and I kind of just want to try something different anyway. So we're going to start with the ensembles. We're going to start with the overall ingredients in the kind of Atlantic basin here for tropical development, and then we'll get into the deterministic runs to end it out, and then we'll move on to other sorts of weather outside of the tropics. But we'll start with the GFS ensemble members, and again, the GFS is the model that picked up on this first. It is the model that has held true to itself, and go ahead and maybe don't celebrate yet if you're a GFS fan, but I would go ahead and give the GFS some credit because the models have definitely trended more in that direction than the other direction. And honestly, the GFS has had a great year so far in kind of sniffing out these tropical systems in the long range. And of course, it's had a couple misses, but overall, I would say it's done better than the European model, which is definitely going to be something that a lot of people probably look at here. But here we go. So taking a look at the ensembles going into Halloween afternoon, and you'll notice at this point, this is when you start to see kind of some of these numbers showing up down here near Panama. These are all different areas that the GFS ensemble members are indicating we could have a center of low pressure. And you'll notice a lot of them, again, kind of developing that down well south into the Caribbean right around Halloween, and a lot of them get a name storm by that point. Now, again, the impacts wouldn't be till later on. As we go here into November 1st, you'll notice even more members begin to uptick, and it's actually kind of a bimodal setup here. So we've got, again, this big area down in the Caribbean with possible development, and then another area that the National Hurricane Center isn't tagged yet for development, but that we are watching kind of north of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola. So could we get multiple storms out of this pattern? Yeah, it's definitely possible, I think. But in terms of high-end impacts, I'm more concerned with this Caribbean system more than this Southwest Atlantic system. Now, do they both need to be watched for potential development? Absolutely. But again, I think the Caribbean system has a higher chance of bringing significant impacts. All right, so here we go. This is getting into basically a week from right now, maybe subtract a little bit or add a little bit, but the ensembles at this point really upticking development down into the Caribbean, continuing to uptick development up near the Bahamas. And some of these members on both of these storms do get quite potent down well into hurricane strength. So these are not just, some ensembles that are showing a depression, again, some strong members. Now, it's once we get that 7 to 10 day out time frame that the models have become a little bit more concerning, and here's what I mean. So we get to this point, and most of the models pull that first system north. Now, some of them bring it through the Bahamas and then north out to sea. Some of them just do it beforehand. A couple get closer to Florida, then pull it north. But most of them kind of curve that one out to sea, and you would expect that with that sort of track this time of year. But this Caribbean system, what has happened is a lot of the models are pulling this further west towards the Gulf of Mexico in the long run here. And you can see exactly that on the ensemble members here. Again, a lot of them getting pulled up near the Gulf, up into Cuba, and then many up towards the state of Florida and the southeast once we get well into the future. So again, I don't say that to scare anybody, but what I will say is, again, the models have trended in that direction. And the good news, we still have plenty of time, like I've mentioned, but something we need to watch for sure. All right, what about the European and its ensemble members? Well, we'll start at the same time frame. This is Halloween afternoon, and you'll notice nothing showing up, but a little bit after that, a couple days later, you'll notice some ensemble members do begin to uptick. This is Sunday, November 3rd, so a week from right now, just a couple of days before Election Day. And here we go. One storm system north of Hispaniola trying to form, and another one again in the Caribbean. You'll notice on the European ensembles less excited than the GFS, but I tell you, we get 10 days out, and we still have a lot of European members that are developing some sort of system down here into the depths of the Gulf of Mexico, and trying to pull it northward in the long run here past 10 days. So both models, at least on the ensemble side of things, showing potential development is favorable out of this pattern. And one of the reasons for that is the ocean temperatures out here. Now, normally when we get to November, the oceans begin to cool down, and that's definitely the case. But in the Caribbean, things have remained very warm, and that is also pretty normal here for the very end of October and start of November. So where both of these storm systems are likely to track or kind of, come from, there are very warm ocean temperatures near, at, or around 30 degrees Celsius. That's up into the 80s, well into the 80s in Fahrenheit, which would be more than enough to promote tropical development, potentially rapid intensification with ocean temperatures of that magnitude. Now, another thing we can look at is wind shear. Is the upper level environment favorable for tropical development? Well, this map I think is a great way to show these. This is the GFS ensembles, again showing kind of departure from normal wind shear. The red colors are unfavorable. The blue colors are more favorable for development. And this is getting right around Halloween. So you'll notice at this point, we've got this big area of unfavorable winds over much of the Caribbean. And you're thinking, well, all right, that's good. That keeps us in the good. And it does for a while, but you'll notice that wind shear begins to break down during the first week in November. And by the time we get a week to 10 days from now, We have well below average wind shear through basically the entire Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. So should something get pulled north into the Gulf, again, would be dealing with a pretty favorable upper level wind environment, all things considered, at least on an overall synoptic scale. Now, on a closer and more mesoscale thing, once we get closer in time, there are little things that pop up that create wind shear that maybe you don't think about in the long run. But overall speaking, pretty favorable conditions here in the upper levels for tropical development. All right. Also, another thing to point out is, do we have dry air or do we have moist air? Moist air more conducive for cyclogenesis. Dry air, kind of hampers that tropical development, kind of breaks down those thunderstorms. Well, really through the entire time period, I mean, our PWAT values or our precipitable water anomalies are pretty high, just indicating that there's a good amount of moisture content in the region. And again, this gets us to 10 days from now. You'll notice kind of where that low pressure is forming on the ensembles is surrounded by plenty of green, indicating a pretty moist environment for that storm to feed off of. So again, all the ingredients point to the potential for, a tropical system to form and to be able to potentially kind of go off to the races for at least November standards once we get into that first week. All right, well, what about the deterministic runs? We'll start with the GFS. This is hot off the press from this morning. This is Sunday, November 3rd. So again, a week from right now, and you'll notice a tropical storm turning into a hurricane forming down here into the depths of the Caribbean and eventually, again, getting pulled northward. And we've got a major hurricane impacting the island of Jamaica in 7 to 10 days and then up into Cuba during the 10-day time frame. Now, at the same time, our other system also develops into a strong storm. And folks, this is pretty crazy to see. This is, again, 10 days from now, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is a possibility that both areas kind of hit their maximum potential here. And we could have 2 hurricanes during the first week of November, not far from the United States. So it definitely would be an uncommon thing. I think only 5 named hurricanes have made landfall in the United States during the month of November. So climatologically speaking, this would be quite uncommon to see. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see. Again, the deterministic runs are not as important right now. What's more important is what I just showed you, that conditions remain favorable. And another thing that's important is the GFS isn't the only one showing it anymore. Take a look at the Canadian model here. It does basically the exact same thing as the GFS, and we have a strong to major hurricane 10 days from now in the Western Caribbean. And again, taking that more concerning western track towards the Gulf of Mexico that we have seen in some of the overnight models. Now, does that stick? Again, who knows? But something that we'll need to watch to see if it's a trend or just kind of a kind of one-run thing. But again, the important thing here is multiple models showing a strong hurricane getting going in the Caribbean. We'll take a look at the European. The European, I'll be honest with you, has been kind of disappointing this year in my eyes in the hurricane season. It has struggled really to get the intensity correct and the timing of formation correct in the Atlantic. And I think it's doing the same here with this system. But you will notice once we get through that first week of November, we do have a big time kind of general spin between that Caribbean system and that Bahamas system, if that's what we're going to call it. And again, something tries to form out of it in the 10-day time frame. But just kind of fails to get anything significant going, which obviously we'll hope that's the case. But just going off a track record so far this year, I'd be willing to bet the GFS is a little bit closer to reality. All right, final thing I'll show you, and again, we already kind of looked at ensembles, but just to show it to you in a different format, this is the next 10 days, the tracks from these ensemble members. Again, this is brand new from the GFS. And you'll notice, again, a lot of members getting a Caribbean system going and pulling it up into the Western Caribbean, generally towards the Gulf of Mexico in about 10 days. And then a lot of members out here with that Bahamas system getting that, relatively close to the southeast coastline. And that could be a storm itself that, brings its own impact. So it could be a 1-2 punch here in the tropics. We'll have to wait and see. The European ensembles, final thing I'll show you. Again, not as excited as the GFS, but definitely is upticked from a couple of days ago here in the Caribbean, at least, with that potential for tropical development. Alrighty, let's move on and start talking about kind of what's happening through the lower 48, what's going to happen through the week ahead. And we're going to go from kind of 0 to 100 really quickly in the weather. For a lot of folks here, as we are watching the potential for some severe weather and maybe even some winter weather over the next week. And it's going to be round after round of this, I think. as we get through the first half of November. Now, current radar out there, most of the rain that is falling is kind of on the extremes of the country, so the southeast coast and then in the west coast. But we'll actually start up here into the Midwest. We do have some showers and snow showers up into the UP of Michigan. So if you're seeing anything fall, let me know what it is. Is it snow, grapple, or just good old-fashioned rain? Would love to hear that report from you folks. Then we move down a little bit, still dealing with fire concerns in the I-95 corridor. Again, unfortunately, we had a firefighter lose their life this week in Connecticut as a brush fire kind of got out of control. So definitely keeping those folks in your prayers, but need some rain pretty desperately in the Northeast. That is for sure. Now, another place that we could use some rain that we actually are getting some and got some yesterday is down into the Carolinas. We've got some rain showers into eastern North Carolina from Greenville back down towards Jacksonville, Wilmington. And we had a good little band of showers work through the Carolinas yesterday, through the Charlotte area, kind of through the I-77 corridor down towards Rock Hill and York County. And behind that, the Carolina wedge is set in. And what I mean by that, you can kind of see it here with the blue on your map. We have kind of some cold air damming or a pocket of cold air that is getting trapped behind the mountains here. And that's going to lead to a pretty kind of dreary fall-like day in the southeast, at least into the Piedmont of the Carolinas and up into the Piedmont and foothills of Virginia. So definitely, kind of more fall-like than it has been. As that kind of settles on in. The other active weather remains out west, and this is the start of our next storm system / our pattern change / a little bit of everything. We've seen a lot of rain and mountain snow through Washington, Oregon, and Northern California over the past 24 hours, and that will continue through the foreseeable future as we continue to track, again, this pattern change on the horizon. Now, just to show you the current surface map, again, high pressure over the east here, which I don't know why I drew an H when there's one already on the map, but there it is. Again, you'll notice some of this cold air damming into the Carolinas. That's going to lead to kind of a dreary, drizzly afternoon for a lot of folks from Charlotte up through Greensboro, through the mountains, the foothills of the Carolinas and Virginia. Other than that, again, a couple showers getting thrown up from that. We will have some snow squalls this afternoon in the Northeast, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. And then obviously this more impactful storm beginning out west. So that's kind of the current surface observations and how that's going to, I guess, continue throughout the day. All right, so this afternoon through the east, the big story I think is going to be drizzle and again dreary conditions in the Carolinas, snow squalls up into New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. You'll notice this is this afternoon about 4 or 5 o'clock. Pretty, again, feisty snow squalls of that through the northern tier of Maine, back into the higher terrains of northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and even upstate New York. And then again, just some drizzle down into the Carolinas. That's really the only precipitation I'm expecting east of the Mississippi today. And again, you'll notice that kind of continues into the overnight hours here. We get into Monday morning, starting Monday off probably pretty calm. And then as we get into Monday afternoon, remaining calm with another nice afternoon on tap before we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. And that's when the stormy weather kind of returns for many of us going towards your Halloween. Now, high temperatures this afternoon, hot through the deep south. Again, don't be surprised in the Carolinas today. Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte, all the way up to Raleigh, Greensboro. It's going to be chilly. So, again, go ahead and expect that. And now it's going to be a sharp gradient as we normally see with the wedge. If you're in Charleston, probably getting up near 80. If you're in Charlotte, it might struggle to crack 60 this afternoon. So definitely a sharp gradient there. With that cold air damming setup, and then chilly up into the northeast as that high pressure kind of settles on in. And again, those snow squalls working on through the higher elevations. We get into tomorrow morning, a chilly morning, definitely for a lot of folks, back down into the 40s and 50s, warmer through the mid-south and through the southern plains as that ridge begins to build in and bring some more humid weather. And then we get to Monday afternoon and beginning to warm up pretty nicely across much of the east, staying chilly into New England. But then by the time we get later in this week, really expect those warm temperatures to kind of catapult into that forecast for a lot of folks. All right, so the pattern. Okay, this is Monday into Tuesday. You'll notice ridging really beginning to build back into the east, troughing staying stubborn out west. And this is going to lead to, I think, a couple of storm systems forming here during the middle of the week. Excuse me. Kind of what's going to happen is we're going to get a big clash of air masses. So this region right in here where this kind of orange and blue are clashing, the jet stream is going to really begin to pick up in intensity due to that temperature gradient. And that could lead to some cyclogenesis, I definitely think, and probably a couple of times. And basically what that means is a couple of storm systems are going to try to cross portions of the country, starting as early as Tuesday and then through the following week, maybe even longer than that. And with that, we're going to get the potential for severe weather and even some winter weather as well. Now, starting in the short range, this is this afternoon out west. Again, squally weather, whether that be rain or snow, that continues overnight tonight and into your Monday. I mean, more of the same out here. And Monday afternoon, it continues. But you'll notice by the time we get into overnight Monday and into Tuesday, low pressure beginning to eject into the Rockies here, beginning to form and potentially bringing, again, that start to a more interesting weather pattern during the beginning of the week. And we can see that here on the global models. I'll zoom things out a little bit for you. Here we go. This is Tuesday morning. You'll notice here in the GFS, low pressure forming here, kind of this good old-fashioned Colorado low, bringing big-time mountain snow into the Rockies and eventually getting into the plains and even bringing some snow outside of the Rockies. Look at this band of snow showing up Tuesday overnight into the Dakotas, even up into northern Minnesota. Could be your first snow of the year for a lot of those folks. And at the same time, here's the cold front, and due to this kind of dry conveyor and warm conveyor belt that we're going to see, I would not be surprised at all to see some severe weather Tuesday into Wednesday here through portions of the plains along this cold front. And this could just be one round of a couple rounds of severe weather here to start November. And then that kind of works on through, and you'll notice the low pressure itself begins to, pull north up into Canada, kind of positioned here at this point. But the front associated with it still digging well down south. And this is Halloween afternoon. So a line of some rain definitely possible. I think severe weather becoming more minimized. Sorry, minimized. That's not a word. More minimized by the Thursday timeframe. But some good old-fashioned heavy rain for you Halloween, so that could, lead to some impacts for those trick-or-treat plans or any other sort of plans you might have. This is kind of the evening and overnight of Halloween. Heavy rain from Mississippi up the Ohio River Valley and scattered rain into the Northeast, remaining dry through the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, and then remaining dry on the backside of that front. But right along that front, going to see some active weather for Halloween. And then that won't be the end of it. Here comes another big trough, another big storm system, more severe weather, more heavy rain, and more mountain snow by the latter part of this coming week. This is about 7 to 10 days out. And then look at this, another one right behind that. So the point here, it's going to be an active pattern over the next 10 days for sure, I think, across much of the lower 48. All right, snowfall. A ton of it in the Rockies. I mean, we're going to be counting it in feet here up through Yellowstone, back through the Cascades, the Sierra Nevadas. I mean, some of these mountain ranges in Oregon and Washington, we could see more than 5 feet of snow. I would not be surprised before all is said and done over the next week. But you'll notice some of that snow breaking containment. Again, a quick band or burst of snow, I think, through portions of the Dakotas, Minnesota. Now, ground temperatures and air temperatures will be a bit of a struggle, so this really won't bring any impacts in all honesty. But it'll be pretty, and it'll be a fun kind of way to start your Halloween time frame here. Again, falling just a couple days before. You'll notice kind of it picking up right here during the 29th and 30th. So that would definitely be fun to see for you folks. And then the other problem is severe weather. And I'll mention I'm using a new website here. This is WeatherWise. They also have an app for iPhone. Let me tell you, folks, this app has really kind of blown me away a little bit, and not sponsored or anything, but I do think Mitch West is working with them, and I saw him post about it, so I wanted to check it out, and it's amazing. It's free. I would go check it out, and I think we're going to use this a lot in the future. So either way, though, the nice thing about it is we can zoom into our outlooks, and here we go, day 3. So let me do the math. Today is Sunday, and we get Monday, Tuesday. So Tuesday afternoon, we do have a marginal risk up already from Duluth all the way back down to Minneapolis, Rochester, and then even down into the Sioux Falls area, Omaha, and then getting back down into portions of Kansas. So I'll kind of just zoom this out a little bit more. Again, a big area of thunderstorm activity possible Tuesday, and I imagine this will get expanded for Wednesday as well as we get another outlook later this afternoon and into tomorrow. But you'll notice we take a look at the ensembles from the GFS, and yeah, bringing a pretty big uptick in that severe weather potential overnight Tuesday into Wednesday from Oklahoma all the way up into portions of Wisconsin there, and this is definitely uptrended over the past couple of days. So would not be surprised at all, again, to see really all hazards on the table, from tornadoes to large hail to strong straight line winds with this front as it swings on through. But you'll notice those ingredients die off a little bit. This is getting into Wednesday afternoon. Again, I think another day of severe weather through Kansas, Oklahoma, and kind of surrounding areas. But that severe weather really struggling to cross the Mississippi as we lose some of that forcing at the surface and really lose that kinematic support as that low pressure kind of pulls north into Canada. But after that, again, another flare-up of severe weather potential about a week from now into next weekend as more areas of low pressure form. And again, that severe weather potential could linger well into the first week of November with this sort of pattern. Rainfall, we definitely need it. So this is good, but it isn't going to be a lot. This is the next 10 days. I think some folks here into the plains from Oklahoma back up through the Ozarks of Missouri, even up into Illinois, Iowa, and then into the Midwest and the Great Lakes region. A lot of rain going to be on the way. The unfortunate thing, us folks in the Carolinas, even up through I-95 corridor from Boston all the way down to Florida, I mean, we're going to struggle to get any rain over the next 10 days. So I am still very concerned about that brush fire and wildfire potential through the eastern seaboard. So need to watch that. Good news, though, we are getting some rain out west. Hopefully that'll kind of cross east. And you're probably wondering, well, will it? Let's take a quick look at the long-range ensembles, and then I'll let you go. And again, this is next week. You'll notice that ridging in the east, that troughing in the west that we talked about. But eventually, there are some signs on some ensembles that one of these troughs, probably 7 to 10 days from now, tries to make it east of the Mississippi. And then this could finally bring some rainfall. But again, this is 10 plus days out, folks. So assuming this even does happen, we've got a ways to go here with that drought concern and with that wildfire concern before really any sort of relief is on the way. Alrighty, folks. Again, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Like it. Send me a comment down below. Ask some questions if you have any, and I'll try my best to get around to answering those. With that said, y'all have a wonderful and blessed rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you all tomorrow.